Okay, so I wanted to start with something from the Torah portion, from the Parsha. We always live with the Parsha, with the Torah portion, and especially these weeks of the Torah portion of the first book of the 5 books. The first book is Bereshis, is Genesis, and that tells some of the happenings in the lives of our forefathers, of our patriarchs, of our matriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. And our sages say the actions of the forefathers is a sign, is a guidepost for the children, us, we're the children. So as we study these portions, it's like, oh, this is directing us, what's going on in our lives. And of course, over these weeks, since October 7th, we have very, very consistently referred back to Torah portion, and we see this in the Torah portion, and we did it for Bereshis, and Noach, and Lech Lecha, and Vayera, and Chayesara, and now we're up to Vayetze. So I really was inspired to look in the Torah portion and said, let's learn some verses that really, I think, are giving us some insight into how we're supposed to be behaving and how we're supposed to look at the world around us. It was actually amazing in terms of something very tragic that happened last week. The event was tragic. What was amazing was seeing it so clearly told in the Torah. So last week, as I'm sure you all heard, they found 2 bodies of hostages that were killed by the terrorists, that were killed by Hamas, right around the hospital enclave. The first one they found was on the 40th day of the war. The woman's name was Yehudis, and she was from the settlement that was suffered the most, as we actually referenced last week, Kfar Kibbutz Be'eri, that they, no house where there's not someone dead, taken, hostage, killed, assaulted. Horrific things happened in that kibbutz, in that settlement, the settlement of Be'eri. So this woman, Yehudis, from the settlement of Be'eri, she was taken, and on the 40th day of the war, they found her dead body. Last week, the Torah portion was Toldos. And if you look in chapter 26, verse 34, when Esav was 40 years old, he took as a wife Yehudis, daughter of Be'eri, the Chiti, and the verse continues, Basmas, daughter of Elon the Chiti. So last week's portion was telling us 40, as he found on the 40th day, Esav is 40. He takes a woman, Yehudis, as this woman's name was Yehudis. Yehudis from, her father was from Be'eri, as this woman was from the settlement of Be'eri. So Yehudis from Be'eri was taken by Esav when he was 40. Yehudis of Be'eri was found on the 40th day of the war. Taking this even further, Rashi explained that why did Esav get married when he was 40? Well, because for the first 40 years, he's stealing and grabbing and molesting women. He's abducting women. He's violating women, as of course happened here, as we know, to the women. And what is the word Rashi uses to describe Esav's abduction and violation of the woman? Gozlim, stealing the women, v'chomsim, and taking them forcibly, chomsim, Hamas. So in the Torah of last week, this woman was found on the 40th day, Esav's 40, Yehudis, the woman was Yehudis, from Be'eri, and Esav's been spending 40 years abducting women, as happened, and the word used for the abduction is Hamas, chomsim. So this was all last week's Torah portion, which doesn't give us a wonderful, positive, warm, excited feeling. It was a horrible thing, but gives us very strongly the message. Everything is from Torah. Torah creates reality. All reality stems from Torah. So I wanted to look at the Torah this week, and I wanted to look for what I could see that relates to our situation. So I thought it was interesting because in the beginning of the Torah portion, which was actually today's portion, the Torah portion, the week is divided according to the days of the week. So this was Monday's Torah portion today. It speaks of Yaakov, of Jacob, who represents the ultimate Jew. Every Jew is called, in a sense, Yaakov, going to a very unfriendly, hostile environment, of very low morals, a very low behavior. And looking at how he handled it, I thought is just giving us a perspective on how we're supposed to try to interact with the world around us. So I'm going to be looking now at the verses. I want to look inside at the verses. This is in chapter 29 of Bereshis, of Genesis. We'll just do the first 7. We'll do the first 7 verses. Okay, so just to give you the backstory, to put this in the context of what's happening in the life and times of Yaakov, of Jacob, he and his twin brother Esav, born to their holy parents, and from a very young age, they split. where Yaakov goes to tremendous holiness and Esav, who had tremendous potential, went in the opposite direction. For the first 63 years of his life, he's sitting and learning Torah day and night. When he's 63, I was described in tremendous detail in last week's Torah portion. He is told by his mother to go to his father, pretend to be Esav, to take the blessings that Yitzchak, for various reasons, wanted to give to Esav. He does so. And then when his father realizes, his father also realizes a few other things, which makes him realize that, yes, Yaakov, Jacob, should receive these blessings. And he blesses him knowingly that it's him from his full heart. But of course, Esav is beyond furious, burning mad. I mean, this is Esav, so burning mad means murder. And Esav says he's got to kill him. And he has respect for his father, who waits till his father dies, and then he's going to want to give his father this pain, and then he's going to knock Jacob off. So his mother, Rebecca, the same way she knew with prophetic spirit about this whole situation of Yitzchak wanting to bless Esav, she also knew with prophetic spirit that Esav was planning on murdering Yaakov. So she makes another plot. And she says to her husband, she says to Yitzchak, I can't handle it. These wives that Esav took, they're giving me so much pain. I don't want Yaakov marrying such girls. He's got to go far. He's got to go to my brother. He's got to marry from my family. Fine. Made perfect sense to Yitzchak, not knowing the backstory of Esav's murderous intention, but that's what happened to him. His father sent and brought back Rivka that Yitzchak should marry from the family. So it makes perfect sense that Yaakov, who's so holy and so pure and continuing the legacy of God and the legacy of the Jewish people, even though in last week's Torah portion, Yitzchak, Isaac, does have this desire for various spiritual reasons to give Esav blessings, but he never thought that those blessings meant, as they don't when you look at the blessings, it's not the land of Israel and it's not being God's holy people. That was never, ever, ever in Yitzchak's intention to give to Esav. Those blessings he actually gives Yaakov before Yaakov leaves to find himself a wife, just like happened to his father. So he gives him clearly the blessings for the land of Israel and the blessings to be God's chosen people. So knowing that Yaakov is continuing the line of God's people, the line that will become the Jewish people, he sends him away to not find a woman from the local people that are not of the highest level, the highest standards of godliness, but to go north, go to his brother-in-law, the very wicked, evil, devious Laban, and find a wife from his daughters. That's when he was 63. He made a pit stop for 14 years. And for 14 years, he learned Torah day and night in the yeshiva of that time, in the Talmudic school of Shem and Avet. After 14 years of not even sleeping for 14 years, he's learning Torah straight. You got to prepare yourself if you're going to get married, you know. He starts journeying to north of Israel, outside the land of Israel, where Lavan lives in Haran. And then he almost reaches there and he's like, oh my gosh, I just passed the place where my forefathers, Avram and Yitzchak, Abraham and Isaac, prayed to God, and I didn't stop there. So he turns around, and then God shortens the distance, and he finds himself on Mount Moriah, and he prays there, and he sleeps there. The only time he slept in 34 years, 14 years before he doesn't sleep, and 20 years after he doesn't sleep. That's the one night he slept. And then God shows him this very famous vision of the ladder of the angels that you might know of. That was all this morning. Meaning I'm saying this, you should understand the context that we were holding. So now here's Yaakov. He just slept last night. He just had this amazing vision. And now he knows he's now going into, as we're saying, unfriendly territory, not the best people and not the best place. But this is where his father sent him. This is where his mother sent him. This is where he's going to find a wife and build for himself a family, build for himself the Jewish people. So the first verse, if we're just looking inside, in chapter 29, the first verse says that Yaakov lifts up his feet. Again, he's in Mount Moriah, Har Moriah, and he's going out a walk to go north of Israel to Haran. And he went to the land of the people of Kedem, and he goes to the land of the people of Kedem. He lifted up his feet. I mean, usually you lift up your feet when you're walking. Why does the Torah say he lift up his feet? Because he was joyous. He's going on a shlichus. He's going on a mission. He's doing his father's will. This is now establishing the Jewish home. This is establishing the Jewish people. So he's going with joy. He's going with confidence. He's not worried what he's going to encounter. So that's the first lesson, I think, that we see from these verses. Yaakov lifted up his feet. He knew he was leaving Israel, which is a sad thing for the patriarchs. He knew he was going to people that are unfriendly, low morals, but this is what God wants him to do. So he lifted up his feet. He strode like with joy, with confidence. That's the first lesson. As we go wherever we're going in life, we're going where God sends us. Even if we're not getting these divine messages in our ears, where we walk, that's where God sends us. That's why we're wherever we are. So we walk like Jacob. We walk with confidence. Might not be friendly territory. Everyone there might not love us. Everyone there might not be so interested in us. We don't worry. Just like Yaakov, we go with joy. We go with confidence. This is our mission, wherever we are, wherever we live, wherever we work, whatever people we encounter. Every one of us is just like Yaakov, just like Jacob. We're all on a mission. We're all God's emissaries. Whatever we encounter, this is what God wants us to encounter. And just like Yaakov, we go with joy and confidence. That was the first verse. The second verse, so fine. So he walks all the way from where Mount Moriah was, Har Moriah, all the way past Israel, like north, to past the northern boundary of Israel to Haran. So he gets to the outskirts of Haran, and he sees a very strange sight. It might not look strange to us, because what do we know? But Yaakov grew up in those times, so he knew all about shepherding. So he saw something that looked really weird to him. He sees a well in the field. Well, that's not weird. That's normal. That's what you do. You take the sheep to pasture and you make sure they drink. He sees a well, and he sees by the well 3 flocks of sheep. And they're just lying there, because that's the well that is going to give water to these flocks of sheep. And on the top of the well, on the mouth of the well, was a huge stone. Now he's looking at that and he's saying, this is weird. It doesn't make any sense to me. If the shepherds are coming to give water to the sheep, well, they would just give them water. What are these shepherds doing? It's the middle of the day. It's not time to say, okay, we're going home. Let's all gather our sheep and we're going to march back to the pens. They're supposed to be grazing. They're supposed to be eating the grass all day long. That's what sheep do. So what's going on? So the next verse tells us sort of like the storyline, not what Yaakov knew, but what we are being told by the Torah, by the scriptures. What normally happened in this strange place? All of the flocks would gather. And when all of the shepherds were there, when all of the flocks gathered, all of the shepherds together would roll the stone off the mouth of the well. And then they would water all the sheep. And then they would put the stone back. What's going on? What's going on is this place was so dishonest and distrustful of each other that, unlike everywhere else in the world at that time, where there's a well, and if you're a shepherd, you go to the well and you give your flock to drink and you go back. Here they couldn't do it like that. Here they deliberately put a massive stone over the well, this one huge stone, that deliberate design that it would be impossible to lift unless all the shepherds were there and collectively they could lift it off. Why? Because everyone wants to see how much water everyone is taking. Now, obviously, there was enough water for everyone. They all watered the sheep and then they put it back every single day. But these people were so dishonest and distrustful of each other. I'm not letting you get away with anything. I'm not letting you getting away with anything. I'm not letting you take water if I'm not around. I'm not letting you take water if I'm not around. I got to see what you're doing. I don't trust you. And I'm cheap. And I'm watching every drop of water. Now, we know the backstory. Yaakov did not. The Torah filled us in with the details, but did not fill Yaakov in. So he's just clueless because it doesn't make sense. We understand from here what type of place he was going to. He might not have known all these details, but he knew enough about Lavan. He knew Lavan, his uncle, his very holy mother's brother, was a very, very evil, wicked, distrustful, deceitful, dishonest person. And Lavan was, but the rest of the people in this place sort of went in that direction as well, as if you continued learning the Torah portion, you would find out. We're only going to do 7 verses. So what happens in the next verse? So Jacob says to them, my brothers, from where are you? And they said, we're from Haran. So I thought also here, it's very beautiful. Yaakov doesn't know these people. They're shepherds, not the highest on the, scale of people, not anyone special. But when Yaakov talks to them, he talks with warmth. He talks with kindness. He talks with affection. He's talking to these complete strangers who are clearly not related to him. And he says, my brothers, before he knows where they're from, before he knows who they are. And this is also a lesson. This is teaching us something in terms of how we are supposed to treat the world around us. Again, the world around us, these people were not Jewish people. It was not a Jewish world at this time. He wasn't talking to Jews. And as we're seeing, they were probably not the best people, coming from clearly not the best place. This town was called Haran, where they lived. Haran, in Hebrew, the etymology of it is anger, because we're told that until Yaakov came there, this place was such a wicked place. It was a place of God's anger. Like God had anger towards these people. They were so wicked. So these people were really not good people. And yet Yaakov is treating them with positivity, with warmth. That's our segue. That's how we're supposed to look at people, no matter who they are. Even like these shepherds, we're supposed to look at them and treat them and express to them warmth and kindness. And they respond and they say they're from Haran. So he says, oh, you're from Haran. Do you know Lavan, the son of Nahum? He said, yeah, we know. He said, oh, is all good with him? And they said, yeah, it's good with him. Look, his daughter Rachel is coming with the sheep. Now, why does that prove it was all good with him? Because these are shepherds. As we said, shepherds were not viewed as the most moral, good people in any society, let alone in this society where none of the people were moral or good. So how are we proving to you that we're all fine with Lavan? Because he's trusting to send a girl to our midst, and he knows she'll be safe. So we're not going to molest his daughter, which would imply that otherwise they might. But his daughter we're not going to molest. We're good with him. Now, why was Lavan sending a girl to the shepherds? No, there were no other girls there. They were all shepherds. But this was Lavan's cheapness. He was very deceitful and very cheap. At this point, Lavan doesn't have any sons. If he had sons, he would have sent his sons. But he didn't have any sons. He had his 2 daughters. So not wanting to spend money on hiring a shepherd and not having any sons to send out as a shepherd, he sends his young daughter Rachel. According to one opinion, Rachel and Leah were twins. According to another opinion, Rachel was the younger daughter and Leah was the older daughter. So I guess the older daughter would have seemed even more inappropriate to send among the shepherds. So he would send Rachel to shepherd the sheep. Okay. Now, very interesting. Let's look at the next verse. What happens? Yaakov got the information he needed. They're from Haran. The people in Haran are okay with Lavan. And this girl now coming, unusually enough, a young girl with a sheep, is actually Lavan's daughter. So Yaakov is finished. He got the information he needed. This is a weird place, weird stuff going on. 3 flocks just hanging around a well. That's not how Yaakov interacts with the world. And this was a point that I thought was so significant for us to see. Yaakov then says to them, there's a long day ahead of us. It's not the time to gather in the flocks. Give water to the sheep and go pasture. Yaakov, as a godly person, which is really teaching us, because we are a godly people. Yaakov can't just say, oh, I got the information I needed. I can go to Lavan, or this is his daughter. Let me talk to her. No. He's like, wait, there's something wrong happening. These people are not like they should be. What are they doing? And in his mind, again, we know the story. These people were so cheap that all the flocks had to come and all the shepherds had to roll off this humongous rock together so we can all see how much water everyone's getting. Yaakov didn't know that. So Yaakov looked at the situation, and the only thing he could process was that the shepherds are on home. They finished pasturing for the day, and they're coming to this like central spot, and these three shepherds with these three flocks are going to walk home. And he says to them, wait a minute, something is off here. There's two options in my head. Either you own the sheep or you're hired workers. In either case, it's a problem. If you're hired workers, you're cheating your owners. You're cheating your masters. They paid you to shepherd for a day, not for half a day. We've got hours ahead of us. Why are we bringing the sheep in now? That's wrong. You've got to be honest workers and stay in pasture until nightfall. They want you to pasture all day because they want the sheep to eat their fill. Then they'll get bigger sheep and they'll get more wool and more meat and all the good stuff you're going to get from the sheep. Maybe these are your own sheep. Maybe you're not hired workers. It's still wrong. You can say, what do you mean it's wrong? It's my sheep. I can do what I want. Yaakov is saying it's still wrong because we also have to be cognizant of the pain an animal can be experiencing. And if sheep are used to grazing all day they get to stand outside and eat. And now you're going to send them to the pens. You're like, I don't care. So my sheep will be a little skinnier. I don't care. It's fine. I can't be bothered. It's not right. It's not fair. It's not kind to your animals. And we have to be conscious of being respectful of man. And we have to be kind to animals. So if you're hired workers, you're cheating your masters. And if these are your own sheep, you're still not allowed to do this because it's pain to the animal. Why am I focusing on this point? Because this was none of his business. These people are not his relatives. They're not Love and the uncle he's going to. They don't work for Love and the uncle he's going to. They have nothing to do with his storyline. But this verse is recorded in Torah. Torah just spent a number of verses. Could have just said he saw the shepherd. We find out that they're the three flocks. We find out why they're doing it. We see Yaakov's reaction. The verses are going to say that they're going to explain to him the whole story of why they're doing this to teach us a very strong lesson. And a lesson that I think is pertinent in the current situation in the world. Yaakov, who represents the ultimate Jew. He's the father of all the Jews, right? Abraham had Yitzchak. Yaakov. Abraham had Yitzchak, but he also had Yishmael. Not all of his descendants are Jews. And then he had many children later in his life. Yitzchak had Yaakov, he had Esau. Yaakov only has the Jewish people. We say his bed was pure, his bed was complete. Every one of his 12 sons, every one of his daughters, they're all the Jewish people. So Yaakov embodies the Jew. So when the Jew is encountering a world, and the world does not seem like a moral world, does not seem like a good world, does not seem like an honest world, as here it was not good, moral, or honest, but in different ways than Yaakov was thinking, we have to do something about it. We have to take a stance. We have to envision and understand ourselves as moral lights to the world. Right now, the world is in a turmoil, and the world are thinking a lot about the Jewish people. And there are those people in the world that are embracing us, are advocating for us. In my Noahide class, a woman is in Boise, Idaho. They're like maybe 1,000 Jews in the entire state. And she, primarily with non-Jewish people, made a whole day march, demonstration for the hostages for Israel. And then she's telling me about she was telling me that a local church made this whole prayer vigil for Israel. Like there's a lot of non-Jews that are thinking a lot about the Jewish people. And of course, there's also non-Jews going in a very different direction as they're thinking about the Jewish people. But in either case, the world always pays attention to us. And now they're even paying more attention to us. And our position and responsibility in the world, which might be even heightened now, is to be the moral barometer of the world, to give the world guidance, to give the world messages of what's right, of what's wrong, of what God wants, of what's appropriate behavior, just as Yaakov did here. And again, the Torah writes very little, relatively speaking, about the life and times of any of the forefathers. As I told you, from the final verse in the previous Torah portion to the verse here, 14 years, we don't know anything about them. From when Yaakov was born until he took the blessings, that was 63 years. We didn't hear one drop in the Torah verses about Yaakov's first 63 years. You know, some things from the Midrash, but from the Torah verses itself, 63 years passed in a blink. We don't know anything. So anything the Torah takes words on, anything is because it's a lesson for us. We're told Torah is from the root word. The etymology of Torah is Hayra'ah. Hayra'ah means instruction. We're being instructed how we, Yaakovs, should live. And this is a very powerful instruction because the Torah just took about 4 or 5 verses to discuss this. So I wanted to apply this for ourselves. I'm not going to continue the storyline, but then Rachel comes, and when Yaakov sees Rachel, he picks us this massive rock that you needed all the shepherds of the village to lift up, and he just lifts it up himself to water her sheep. But we're not. It's a very fascinating Torah portion, and we're not going to talk any more about it because I just wanted to take from it this lesson that I think is so relevant now, how we, the Yaakov, the Jew, is supposed to interface with the world around us, which probably is going to have different moral values, different standards than we have, how we should, as Yaakov did, go forth with joy and confidence, how we should extend kindness and respect to the people we meet, and how we should try to raise the people in the world around us. How should we try to lift them up and give them maybe a different moral message than they know on their own? Can anyone think of situations where they've seen this in their own life or where they could see it in their life?
I can say something. When I worked, it was some years ago, and even when I was not very observant yet, but I always had this feeling that everybody knows I'm a Jew, so I'm responsible to be a good person, to behave the right way.
That's very, very true. That's called what we call in the colloquial making a Kiddush Hashem. A Kiddush Hashem means sanctifying God's name. And it's like for good or for bad. If someone commits a crime, you'll read in the paper, this Jewish person, if a Christian commits a crime, if a Methodist commits a crime, if a Catholic commits a crime, if a Muslim person commits a crime, what difference does religion have to do with anything? If a Jew commits a crime, all the papers have to say it's a Jew. And conversely, when a Jew does something right, it's a Jew. It's a Jew doing it. So we always have to be conscious of that. Absolutely. It's called making a Kiddush Hashem, sanctifying God's name, because when they look at us, it doesn't make a difference if you're religious or not. That's not what they know. They know you're a Jew. And knowing you're a Jew, how you behave is how they're going to view how God is, because you're God's people. And how you're behaving is sort of almost connecting back to God. When we behave inappropriately, it reflects badly on God. When we behave appropriately, it reflects well on God. So we sanctify God's name or we disgrace God's name based on our behaviors. That's 100% true. We, like it or not, are reflecting God. So as Rachel said, yeah, if you do or don't want, people do look at you and make judgments about the Jews and about God. And I mentioned in this class recently, I think that situation I had with the nurse in the hospital who was so nice to me above and beyond the call of duty. And he explained in like one sentence that when he came to this country, a Jew was very nice to him. And here, many years later, it was just natural that he sees someone who's so obviously a Jew, me, and he wanted to extend that kindness to me. Very, very true. Anyone else? Any other thoughts on how this concept applies in your life or could or should apply in your life? All right. Well, I think It's something to really think about. Oh, I got someone. Chava.
Yes. So I'm thinking that when we kind of assimilating, right? Maybe not not physically, but in our preferences, like interested in other cultures. I think it's actually situation turns against us. Like when we have very strong Jewish identity and we do what God told us Jews supposed to do, God protects us, and other cultures, I don't know about respect, but leave us alone, maybe.
Respect.
But when we,
I
don't know, I wouldn't go that far, maybe especially seeing what's going on right now, but maybe leave us alone. But when we kind of trying to be one of them, then we mingle with them, and that gives them more like an open door to be jealous of us, right? Because like we do the same thing, we go the same places, and they're jealous of us, right? We live in the next door, and that's what creates jealousy and that root of anti-Semitism.
After the war started a few weeks ago, I'm very bad with names. I forget who it is, but some Canadian speaker, influencer, professor, philosopher, whatever, saw a little clip on a status and I was interested. So I Googled and found him and found his whole speech. And he was talking like Chava was saying that the world, he's not Jewish. And he's saying this from a completely secular perspective, nothing religious about what he was saying. But he was saying the Jews are the natural hated people of the world because in any culture we've ever been, we're always a minority. And in any culture we've ever been, we're always the most successful. We're God's chosen people. God shines his blessings on us as you've all seen yourselves coming as immigrants to America. A Russian wave of Jews, they came as immigrants to America, and what they've done as compared to people that have been in America for generations. So he said it's like the given in the world. There's always that easy scapegoat. There's always that natural group we can hate when it's convenient to hate, because we'd rather hate than deal with our own problems. We'd rather hate than work hard ourselves. Or a government would like to, take their people's resentment, and instead of it reflecting back on the government, let it go in the direction of someone else. The scapegoat, he says it's always been the Jew because it's just so natural. They're always a minority and they're always the most successful. So as Chava was saying, he put this in a lot of high terms and a very extended discourse, but it's exactly what Chava is saying. There is a natural jealousy. What Chava is saying, which I think is correct, is as we more and more try to act like we're like everyone else, it sort of rubs people even more wrong. When she was saying that, I was thinking historically, we see this very strongly in Spain. When the Inquisition started, in Spain, as in many other countries at that time in Europe, there was a lot of forcible conversions. Throughout Europe, throughout the Christian world, Jews were constantly being told, accept or we'll kill you or we'll expel you. And the Jews were always being expelled from country to country or were being slaughtered. It's very interesting that nowadays we have this new version of Christianity, the fundamentalist Christians in America who are saying we want to embrace you with love, and maybe that way get to reach you and convert you. But at least we're doing it with love and support of Israel. But in the past, the world was washed with the blood of the Jews, primarily from Christian sources, from Christian doctrine. In Spain, pre the Inquisition, there was a lot of pointed attempts to forcibly convert, massacre the Jews. And for the first time as a group, Jews agreed to convert. Again, they didn't agree with any love for the church or any belief in any of it, but they wanted to save their lives. And this group of people that converted were hated and despised by the Spaniards. They hated them. They hated them far more than the Jews that stayed in Spain until all the Jews were expelled. They called them Marranos. They called them the Anusim. They called them pigs. It means pigs in Spanish. You're fakers. You're horrible people. And the whole Inquisition started as the expression of the Spaniards' hatred for these fake Christians, really Jews that were in their midst. So the more we try to think we'll do what the world wants and then the world will embrace us, this proves so strongly that when we do what the world officially wants, the world wants us to convert at that time. The whole world wants us to convert. And when the Jews convert, the Spaniards hate them even more than they hated the Jews. And of course, we saw this in much more recent history in the Holocaust. That where did the Holocaust start? In the most assimilated countries in Europe, in Germany, where the whole reform movement began, where assimilation, enlightenment was at its height. The high majority of the German Jews and the Jews in Austria were very assimilated. In these countries, that's where the Holocaust started. That's where there was such hatred of the Jews. Of course, then it spread and extended to many other areas. But that's the cradle for it. So definitely what Chava is saying is true. And I think it reflects back to what Rachel said, which reflects back to what we're saying in this Torah portion, that we have a mission, that we are supposed to interact with the world. We're not supposed to ignore the world. Yaakov didn't ignore the shepherds. We're supposed to interact with the world. And we're supposed to interact with the world knowing our position as the moral barometer of the world. Knowing our position, that in whatever way we can, so Rachel said a very practical way when she was working, she just had this consciousness that I'm a Jew. They all know me as a Jew. And whatever I do, that's going to be a reflection on how a Jew behaves. And I think we all know that. And I think we probably all experience that overtly or covertly. And even more, we're saying, utilize that situation to give moral messages, not only to the Jews, to the world. When we look at a world and we look at many people are saying, so what's going to be the day after, right? What's going to be the day after? What's going to happen afterwards? It's nice. The world's already jumping and assuming we're going to completely obliterate Hamas. God willing, very soon. But what's going to be after? And looking at the Torah, re-education. Can we do it? Can we educate people to shift from 70 years of being inculcated with such hatred to a different mind, to a different behavior, to a different vision of the world and of the Jew and of themselves and of the relationship? But really, it's our mission. It's our mission for the whole world. It's our moral mission for the whole world. Anyone else? Any other thoughts on this?